And it's live. Okay, cool.
Yay.
So I guess I'll start. It's like the second slash third roadmap meeting for Storybook. Uh, we're here with a few other maintainers. Really happy for you all to be here, even though for some it's like really early in the morning. um, Yeah, so I've got an agenda of things that I would kind of like to discuss, but if there's anything else that you guys want to bring up, please bring it up. It's more than welcome, any input that you have. So is there anything you guys want to talk about first? One of the big topics I think that we should discuss is, of course, the 3.3 release and how that's going and what still needs to happen to make that a reality.
Should we start with that?
Sure. You want to kick it
Yeah,
off?
sure. So I think we are basically uh, sort of feature started on 3.3 in terms of getting everything integrated and released to alpha. There's, I guess, last week we merged the Angular piece. And so I need to do a release of that, an alpha release of that. But I think that'll be basically the feature set for 3.3. And then we'll put the alpha out. And I think there's a refactor on your list, which I think needs to happen before we go live with that. So I'm happy to do that refactor or work with anybody who wants to work with me on that. And then I think it'll just be about kind of grinding out whatever problems come up before we do the release.
I will add the screenshotting thing for Angular so that if you do indeed do this refactoring, that you will have a great confidence that everything works. I'll probably do some clicking and re-screenshotting as well, so you just got a really good feeling that it's working. You don't have to do some manual testing all the time. Really, that's really why I did it, so that we could do this refactoring.
That's awesome. That's really nice. I haven't tried it out yet, but
It works. It
psyched
works
about
in the
it.
CI. So
Very cool.
my big question is who's going to do this refactoring? Who wants to do it? Just putting it out there. It's not really something that I really want to be doing the next few weeks. So if there's someone else who can do it, that would be really welcome.
We talking about pulling the common like store functionality out of the three view layers, the three apps.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking about. So we currently
Yeah.
have React, React Native, Vue, and Angular. And there's a lots of duplication going on between those four.
Yeah, I'm still pretty keen to do it. I know I haven't had much time recently. I mean, I don't think it will be all of the duplication, but I certainly would like to look at the store, like the thing that stores the stories and gives you access to them and stuff. There's a whole nother, I guess, area of duplication which I think would be a lot harder to refactor out, which is the like Webpack stuff, because there is a lot of commonality, especially between, you know, say Vue and React, I think, in the Webpack config, but I just don't know if we're going to be able to sensibly refactor that, given that like it's quite different for Angular, right? And I don't know if you've had thoughts on that, Norbert, but that would be, I think that would be a separate thing. Do you agree?
I think that there's like a server folder in every app that we have. And I think 99% or 80% of that content is the same in all the apps. And there's even some tests or specs that are duplicated. And yeah, I think that's really part of the things that we want to refactor as well. But really the demand, or so say, for the refactor was on Michael's part. So maybe he can explain what he thought was really needed to do refactoring of.
Yeah, so I think pretty much what Tom was mentioning is what I had in mind about the store and kind of the how you interact with stories programmatically. Um, Not so much of the Webpack stuff. And I was the one who requested it just because I don't want us to kind of keep copying folders. And I think in addition to the refactoring of the library, we should also have a kind of developer guide for um, how to add a new framework that kind of goes along with that. But I don't think that's necessary for the release. Um, so Tom, I know you talked about doing the refactor of the store, but you've also been really busy shipping some stuff. So I was thinking that if you're up for it, maybe I could just kind of drive that first pass of that refactoring and kind of go into a review loop with you and with anybody else who's interested. And I'm finally kind of in one place for a few weeks, so I can sort of settle down and hunker down on that.
Yeah, sure, no problem, Michael. I will have a bit more time in the next couple of weeks, I think, but happy for you to do it too. So let's just coordinate between the two of us, but we'll figure it out.
Awesome.
Okay, so next few week-ish, Michael and Tom will pair together to make this refactoring happen. And I think we should be careful with new merges that might introduce things to the 3.3 branch. I would not say that we should freeze merging things into it, because then the question comes up, like, where do we merge it? You definitely don't want to freeze all development.
But a dev null branch. Yeah.
Maybe that's not even a too bad idea.
Sure.
But I do have things coming up that are kind of like the 4.0 territory. So, but we'll discuss that a little bit later.
So where is this refactor going into 3.3?
Yeah, so basically each of these frameworks have some boilerplate code about the story store, and I'll make that in a separate branch and issue a pull request into 3.3. But for me, that's one of the main sort of hygiene pieces that I want to get in for 3.3.
Is there any reason why we can't wait for 3.4? Because I feel like we already have a lot on the 3.3 branch, and like, my view is like 3.3 should go out when we're feeling ready with like Angular and that kind of stuff. And like for stability purposes, we can keep that refactor onto 3.4 so it gets more tested.
Thoughts?
I would say that we should be doing alpha or release candidate releases of 3.3. I'm neutral on the idea of releasing it as a latest version before or after the refactor, but I do agree that the refactor needs to happen. Yeah, if you feel that this refactoring should happen before, I'm fine with that. If you guys feel that we can refactor after, I'm fine with that as well.
I guess my main concern is more like, go ahead.
I was going to say I'm not religious about the refactor, other than it has to happen at some point soon. So I think, how about this? How about I'll put together a refactor like in the next couple of days, and then float it out there. It'll be in a separate branch, so we won't merge it into 3.3, and then we can make a call on whether we merge it or whether we punt it for the next release.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just more concerned about like stability and like keeping everything working once we bump that version. I feel like one of the things we kind of messed up on for the 2.2 was like a lot of early bugs didn't get caught because we merged things too quickly.
Well, that's why we have the release branch, and that's why we have these alphas. So basically, the idea would be that we're not gonna do the full release until we feel confident about it, rather than just continuously merging into master. which was
Yeah,
how we were
yeah.
doing 3.2. But I point taken, and so I obviously am big on trying to keep things.
Yeah, but if we like don't freeze that branch or like keep merging like big things like refactors into it, like to me, the previous testing that has been going on before that makes that kind of null, because now you have another big change that hasn't been tested as much.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay. Fair.
So what would your suggestion be, Daniel?
I think we should put that off until like 3.4. I would love to see us have like a more defined release roadmap, I guess. Like get bug fixes out maybe every week, and then like bigger releases every now and then, every 2-3 months. That way, when something gets merged to like the next feature branch instead of the master or whatever, whoever makes the pull requests know when to expect the change to be deployed as well and to be published. So like users don't perpetually wait like they do now for the next release, or like have to be forced to jump into an alpha when they're not really ready for that that test, I guess.
But bug fixes should be merged to master currently, are they not?
We don't have like a very strict guideline as to what is a bug fix. And so I feel like some of us have been merging some stuff to 3.3 when we don't feel too sure about it. But that's something that I think we should discuss as well.
Yeah, I think that key point about when to merge what where is a great thing to discuss during this conversation.
Definitely. Personally, I've been merging things to 3.3 as the default because I had the feeling like we're really close to release on the 3.3 anyway. That's kind of where I was coming from.
I think my view is that I think I would get it out to users if it's like a small fix as soon as we can.
Yeah. I feel like there was sort of a pendulum that swung the other way. So we were way too aggressive about the releases on 3.2, and a lot of stuff broke. And now it's sort of swung the other way where everything's in 3.3. And so the nice thing about doing weekly releases is that when there are problems, we find out about them and fix them pretty quickly, and we sort of amortize the cost of getting things out over a number of small releases, where now we're going to have this sort of gigantic release that has so much stuff in it that there's going to be all kinds of bugs that were coded 2 months ago, right, that like nobody's used yet. And so I feel like we need to find that middle ground between the two strategies.
Yeah, definitely agree.
But Daniel, would you be interested in writing some sort of recommendation or document on what would constitute a fix and what we should directly merge to master, what should be in the next release branch, and what would something that we need to put off of? Is that something that you can do?
Yeah. I'll put that as a task for myself.
Awesome. Thanks.
Very cool.
So that's kind of like a to-do that will happen. If you need any help with that, Daniel, we're always happy to help, of course. So you guys want to move on to the next topic?
Yeah.
Okay. So in line with the refactoring in accordance for Angular, there is something that's also next in line for which framework we're going to be supporting. So spoiler alerts, I've got a meeting set up with two of my colleagues who have become familiar with Polymer. And so next Friday, I am going to attempt to build Storybook for Polymer.
Wow. You love Polymer, don't you?
No, but it's fine. It's fine. I'll give it a good shot anyway.
Doesn't Storybook for Polymer already exist and it's called Storybook?
Shall we not have this discussion in public?
Joke.
And I'm also interested in supporting Ember at some point, though Ember has a completely different CLI and setup. I'm actually contacted by two Ember maintainers that they are actually interested in this, so and helping out. So I will not be coding that myself, I think, because I'm too unfamiliar with the Ember CLI and well, basically the Ember ecosystem. But I am interested in supporting that at some point. What are your thoughts on either of these two, Michael?
I don't use either, but I think that's awesome. It seems like we're sort of going for the more the merrier approach. And as we tighten up our testing situation, which I think you just did a really good first cut at, then we should be able to do that. I guess one question is, when we sort of commit to supporting a given platform, how do we make sure that that platform continues to get the love that it needs throughout its life, right?
Well, we're not building a paid product. And for me, I try to get the ball rolling, but it's not up to me or up to you, Michael, or up to anyone here to make sure that the ball keeps rolling. You know, we'll try and we'll do our best, but we'll need the community's help of that specific framework to keep it rolling and keep it up to date and keep it working well, getting the features. Yeah, it's not just all up to us. So with like with Vue, we need to get involvement with the Vue community to make sure that they help get this ball rolling and keep it rolling.
Do we need to like what do we see as our sort of responsibility in terms of you know, say when a big release like 3.4 goes out, what is our policy towards testing all the new stuff with the various Vue layers? I mean, I know that we've had a lot of trouble over the journey with React Native, and part of that's just because React Native is complicated. But I think part of it is because as far as I know, none of the maintainers is really actively using React Native. We all kind of are a bit interested in it, so willing to test it, but it doesn't get to as much testing as the other frameworks, as far as I can tell. And that has caused problems along the way where bugs have appeared that we haven't seen in our testing. So do you think we need like a policy around that? Like maybe, I mean, one idea would be that we need to have someone on the, you know, sign off on any big release whose job it was to test it thoroughly on any given framework. So otherwise, as the number of frameworks increases, the chance of like a framework just not being tested, you know, really at all beyond any automated tests we have sort of increases, right? If we don't have a policy around that.
I'm actually, I think, more in favor of like having, I guess, required reviewers or something like that, where somebody has a lot of domain knowledge in a specific area of the Storybook code base, perhaps sign off in the pull requests that pertain to their area. And then perhaps when we do a release, they can do like a run through of the example app and any other usages they have to make sure that it works before we do a publish.
For the major or for the like minor releases, 3.x type releases, not for the small weekly releases.
Yeah, but I still think that if there's like a pull request that gets merged into master, that somebody with knowledge of that specific code base should probably take a look at it and also test it. And in React Native's case, I think there's a lot of things that don't seem, there's a lot of edge cases that if you don't know React Native, there's no way you understand how to debug.
You're
I guess what
actually
I'm
using React Native a lot, aren't you, Daniel?
I use it, but I don't really write React Native or like core iOS native apps. So my debugging ability is limited.
I guess what I'm thinking of is, I mean, I think if there's a pull request that directly affects a framework, then it sort of makes sense, certainly, to sort of block that on some person who's known to sort of be an expert. But I think it's more the stuff that is less obvious that it's going to affect that framework. Like we've had a lot of changes to add-ons that have indirectly affected various frameworks, and I'm not sure, firstly, that it makes sense to block those pull requests on sort of checking every framework against some, having some person who's the expert for that framework checking every framework. Maybe it does. And then I guess my second point would be, do we even have that sort of person, like when we're talking about Polymer here, does that mean that we can't, merge the Polymer pull requests until we sort of recruit someone who's going to take responsibility for that?
I'm kind of scared with the words like blocked and responsibility and finding the one person. Like this is
sure.
that sounds like a lot of pressure on someone. And, that's I don't think healthy in an open source project. So I agree with the thought notion that you should try and get a review from the person or persons who have specific domain knowledge. I think I'm already trying to do that by tagging the people or mentioning them in a GitHub comments, like can you please review this because I know you're using Windows, for example. But yeah, I cannot enforce that in any way. Unless I want to block a whole bunch of PRs every day. And that's something I don't want to do.
Yeah, I mean, it's not going to be practical to do it at the PR level. It's possible that we could think about something at the sort of, major release level, this like, I guess, couple of times a year that we do a big 3.4 style release. I'm still not sure. It seems hard to coordinate that, but.
Yeah. I think the answer here is automating less and writing more and writing better integration tests, writing better like end state tests, and that's kind of what I started with.
I would say another thing about React Native specifically is that it's pretty churny itself. And so I think some of the problems that we had, I mean, a lot of them were just due to our own code base, but also it's something that's getting updated constantly. Whereas I think a lot of these web frameworks may be a little bit more stable.
By far. I mean, there's a reason why React Native is on a 0 dot basis still. It's, in my opinion, it's really experimental still compared to something like Ember or React or Polymer even. Those things are way more stable, and they're way more standard too. They're way more alike.
As somebody who took some of the slack with React Native, and I know Tom and Daniel, like a lot of us jumped in when things got broken in React Native, but like I wouldn't really be that interested. I like in the React Native's case, I'm kind of interested in that. And so even though it was kind of reactionary and sucky for the user bases, like at least There's a group of people who are all kind of interested in making it work. And even with that group of people, it still was kind of flaky. And so I don't know how that's going to extend to other frameworks, basically. And I worry about that because I don't want Storybook to have a reputation as a flaky code base. I want it to have a reputation as a great platform that everybody should use for doing their UI development.
I think that's the main thing I'm like pretty concerned about as well. Is like I feel like every week here at work, like we use it pretty extensively. Like there is at least 2 or 3 cases where like something either we didn't catch or it's like an edge case that we just never thought of that happens. And then sometimes it's also like dependency issues and stuff like that. And so would love to have some sort of like improvement in terms of like stability and reduction of bugs in general.
I think related to the other frameworks, I think the alternative would be that they build their own version of Storybook and it's going to be buggy too. So may not sound like the best option, but maybe a buggy Storybook for their platform is better than the alternative. And I'll iterate again that I think the solution here is to involve their community and get them to help us, not have all the load of ensuring that it works perfectly in all their use cases on our shoulders.
Would it be helpful to communicate? Hi, I'm Doug, by the way.
Hi, Doug.
Would it be helpful to communicate kind of upfront, like this is the state of this framework? So with React, like we feel very, very comfortable with Storybook, and it should be seen as solid, reliable. With React Native, we're sorry, but it's also in a state of unreliability. So you can use this, but please bear with us because we're fighting the bugs as fast as we can. Please report them if you find them. So we're like right up front, just state it like, here's where we are. Something like Polymer would be classified as more of experimental. Does Polymer excite you? Maybe you could take on the responsibilities of making it, a first-class citizen in the Storybook world. So that homepage really just says like, here's where we are, here's where we make the community bigger. So here's some of our fun projects we're working on too.
I definitely think that's a good idea to flag some sort of status on each one of the projects and even maybe some of the add-ons as well.
Yeah, I think this is something that's complicated in a mono repo because when, at least right now, like in the most recent release, I did the force publish all so that now every time we do a release, it upgrades the versions for all packages in the mono repo. You could imagine somebody doing like Shillman / Polymer, Shillman / Storybook Polymer like package, which is separate from the mono repo. And then when we bump the version of the mono repo, that package just sort of hangs off and is dependent maybe on a previous version of Storybook. And so it's sort of a distributed version of things and clearly separates the responsibility. I know you hate that word, Norbert, but of like because right now when it's in the mono repo and we publish all of those packages, I totally agree, Doug, that sort of highlighting the status of these different packages is a great idea. But like it's very easy for us to break some package unless we have a really good suite of tests around that or a really complicated release project process.
I'm kind of coming into all this kind of new, but I feel like that there is really the state of JavaScript or these frameworks as a whole. Like all the I find that the projects that are the packages or the things I want to work with are the ones where the teams are like not only sorry, but they're communicating like what happened. We recently did this with the left-hand navigation in the panel. For whatever reason, Yarn broke the transition, the CSS transition. So everybody was right there in the GitHub issue, and here's a fix for right now will get you past it. And then I forgot which one of you highlighted like how to fix it, but that was awesome. And now we're back on our way. So as a user, that makes me feel really good because I can not only understand like here's the state of the world, but also here's how I can fix it. Because really, I think the projects that I don't like are the ones where it's a black hole, and I'm coming in kind of new, so not smart enough to know how to debug or figure it out myself. So I really love the idea of figuring out a way to over communicate, and just being honest too. Like we really, like you mentioned with the React Native, like we really want this to be a first class citizen, but right now, here's the state of the world.
What form would that take? Would that be blog posts, or would that be some readmes of the things, or how would you propose to do that?
That's a good question. I think maybe there's a couple small ways you could handle it. Yeah, I'm just brainstorming here, but really showing up front, like here's the platforms we support, and then identifying like, the level of support we give them, and then right next to that, maybe there's a red light, green light of test passing. So right up front, you can see like, I don't know.
I like that.
It's almost like no incidents in the last 23 days, or in the United States, where we post that in the factory walls, but there's something to be said for that, because now I feel like, wow, it hasn't broken in 150 days. Like these guys are on top of it. And so whatever that feeling is that we could give the user, I think would be really beneficial. But I do think that, sorry to talk so much, but I do think on the other side too, there's a marketing blog post side of it too. But I think that part should kind of be released with release notes. So it's not only like new features or whatever, but here we're listening to you. Here's how we've kind of shored up some of our architecture.
So bringing it back to concreteness, we would make a blog post about announcing Storybook for Angular, and clearly note that this is something that we are not 100% confident about, but we really want to get community feedback with and community involvement with. It's not going to be 100% stable out of the gate, and we would just be upfront and open about it. Yeah.
I think it's also a place in the documentation with a list of all the packages and their sort of our subjective status on those packages and sort of test passing. I think that's a really nice way to sort of give somebody, kind of like people have their status pages for the services, but we would have it for our packages. It's a pretty interesting idea.
Is there something that we could do as well on the subject of like, hey, if you want to make this better, like here's what you can do? Because I think that's like the key thing here, right? I'm really relying on Storybook for Angular, but like it is a bit flaky. I wish I could make it less flaky. What can I do as an Angular user? Can we, like, maybe we should be thinking a little more about, obviously jumping in and fixing issues is something that such a user can do, and that's great. But is there maybe a way that we can really empower people to be involved with the sort of QA process? Because I think that's really, to me, like the hard part. It's awesome if we get automated tests, like that's great for QA, but ultimately you can't do everything with automated tests. Maybe you can, but it's sort of, it's a goal to get to. It's not where we are now, and we probably won't be there. So is there some way that we could sort of make the release process more transparent or something to get to like enable people who are sort of watching from the sidelines to be more involved? Is that something we should think about?
I think it's a great idea. I guess the question is, how do we reach those people? So in the case of like 3.2, we did have an alpha process. And so we did release, I don't know how many, 6 versions of alpha, which I think was pretty effective. But as far as I know right now, the only place that we post those releases is in the Slack channel. And that was enough to get people involved to the level that people are in the Slack channel. But I'm more worried about probably, like Daniel, you could speak to your coworkers, where in your case, you're in the Slack channel, you're involved in it. You're probably like your company sort of representative around Storybook, maybe. But like, if you're just some random Joe who like hits upgrade and then all of a sudden nothing works, you're sort of like, what the heck's happening? And that's kind of what I'm imagining a lot of people when things break, you know. I'm sure almost everybody's using it as an engineer, but like there's engineers who are in this hangout right now discussing kind of infrastructure, and there's engineers who are just busy trying to get their jobs done and just want things to work. And I'm worried more about those folks and how do we get those people involved in the alpha process, because they're probably not in the Slack channel right now.
I still think it's pretty hard for first-time contributors to find something to contribute to. Like, we have, you know, the tags on GitHub, but there aren't very many of them. And I think we can use a lot more help on other things like testing, like that's just mentioned, but that's not really like a bug fix or any of that. But it could maybe be an issue as well, like test 3.3 alpha, whatever, and report back on bugs.
Yeah. I mean, we could build something into the like tool that spits out a message when you start up Storybook, right? Like that would be the sort of highest reach approach. You know, like we're currently testing like alphas for the 3.4 release. You know, when you start up Storybook, it could like phone home and find that out. That's just one idea.
That would be pretty awesome. I like that idea.
I mean, because it's not typically that hard to upgrade Storybook, right? So if you would, you know, just to branch your app and like run some npm upgrade command and just like start your Storybook and see if it doesn't, like see if it works. That could be like a, you know, 15-minute like contribution by a user. They're just prompted to do it and they've got the time. Potentially, you know, that means we see issues like that much earlier, which is really going to help with that feeling of stability for the framework, right? To have issues reported before the release rather than after.
Is it possible to only show a message when there's error? So maybe like it comes up that just highlights like, here's where our issues are. Quick, easy way to click to the GitHub issues. Maybe it takes you directly to the tags of alpha or something like that. So, because the first thing I do when something's broken is I go check out the console. So if there's something nice right there, like, have no idea what just happened, here, click here. Maybe someone else has stumbled upon this also. If not, add the issue yourself. Or just kind of eliminating that middle step and giving them a gentle nudge to, hey, report it, because we want to firm this up.
Sounds like a really good improvement, but I think the idea that was being discussed is a little bit different from that, in the way that we would nudge existing users to try the alpha release. Is that correct, Michael? Or Tom?
Tom?
Yeah, I mean, that was the thing that I
got out
also
of
just wrote, trying to figure out a good way to do, and that idea of phoning home was just one thought. I mean, I think I agree with what you were saying, Michael, which is that purely just posting in Slack, I mean, is not going to have the reach that, you know, I don't think it's reaching a large percentage of our users. So I think we could probably do better. And then the more eyes we have on any given alpha, the better, really. So if we could all maybe just think of ideas and whatever, come back, open GitHub issues or whatever about, if anyone has any good ideas. I mean, yeah, the tool phoning home is an idea, but there's probably others that other projects do. You know, maybe just be louder about it on Twitter. That would be another way to do it.
I think on our homepage, our documentation site, we can have like a banner way on the top that says, "Hey, there's a beta. Help us test it."
It's a good idea.
It's a really good idea, and I'm interested in making the idea of adding a notification to nudge people to try the alpha release from their command line. I'm interested in making this a little bit more concrete, possibly at some point later on the Slack or so, and not in this meeting. But I'm interested in discussing that and how that would exactly work without annoying people, because I can imagine if you're just trying to do your job and you get this message every time you start up Storybook, you will hate us.
Yeah, maybe. Let's talk about it offline. I don't think we need to go into the nitty-gritty in this meeting.
My colleagues were killing me over this message from Open Collective.
Real quick though, just to add, it could just be refactoring the welcome to Storybook content on that first screen. Down at the bottom, you could just say, want to participate in the beta channel, here's how you do it. And that way, if you don't want to deal with it anymore, you can just delete that, or you do whatever you want.
Nice. That's a really good one. Easy.
Yep. Okay. Like it. But let's discuss that in like a maintenance chat or something. So there's a small thing that I wanted to bring up, and that was this dependency upgrading management tool that Phil Hypnos introduced. I actually really like it because it's upgrading all our dependencies versus the dev dependencies only, which is what Greenkeeper was doing. It has introduced quite some noise because at first it was upgrading everything individually, but props to Phil for merging all those things. I mean, that's a lot of work. So I really want to thank him for it. So it's currently in batch mode. And that's kind of sad for Michael because he was at first making a changelog which had all the information in it, and now it has a lot less information in it. Is that something that you feel strongly about, Michael?
So basically, like, I don't know how people use the changelog. To me, like, features and bug fixes are very clear in the changelog, that we want to communicate what's changed, whereas version upgrades, maybe people look at that, maybe they don't. When we're doing lots of version upgrades, those version upgrades are all sort of captured in a drop-down anyway. But I think before it would say upgraded package name from some version to another version as a kind of line item in the changelog, and now it says upgraded 2 packages, dependencies IO, upgraded 2 packages, dependencies IO, and you can click to see what they were, but it's not informative at all.
No,
and so, So in the last release that I did, there were just a couple of those lines, and I just left them in rather than going in and sort of expanding them. But in terms of a long-term solution, I think either we need to figure out how to change the dependencies thing, or we go back to individual packages, or we improve the changelog tool in some form. But I don't quite know what flexibility we have on the dependencies side. And so if there were better solutions there, I would welcome those.
So I think the person building this dependencies.io tool is basically doing it along with our feedback, or Phil's feedback, which is just amazing that this person is building this amazing tool in part for us. So yeah, I'm really thankful for it, and I'm really happy that we're able to use it. But there's one thing that I wanted to bring up, that there's of course,
sorry to interrupt, but I got to.
It was chatting, so I got distracted by reading. One thing I wanted to bring up is that we are actually exposing Webpack and Babel, so we need to be careful of those two when upgrading, and I think those should definitely show up in the changelog. So we need to do some diligence there. Other than that, any minor, we should basically not really put them in a changelog because those things are, well, backwards compatible, right?
In theory, until Moment.js breaks you.
Yeah, I guess.
I wrote the changelog tool, so if there's anything, like for example, if those pull requests from dependencies.io have a particular structure to them, I could just parse that structure out and do whatever we want on the changelog generation. So
well, it's a tool generating this commit. So yes, there's a structure behind it, because it would be
right.
really
I haven't
weird
looked at the commits though. But like if those had bulleted lists in at the top that just show which packages were upgraded, then I could potentially pull those out and reflect those somehow.
Okay.
And we could show changelog for dependency upgrades in a different way. But right now it's just not working. So, and I haven't had the time to dig in on it.
Yeah, I didn't get that thing to work locally on my machine so far. So I'd still need your help.
The PR log?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's still broken for me. Which is why I haven't been doing releases for months, because that thing is broken for me.
Okay, we should follow up with that offline. But anyway, I'm happy to do releases, and I guess I should probably sync up with Phil about what needs to change where. But it sounds like from your standpoint, we do need to highlight version changes for Webpack and Babel, but everything else we might
I don't think everything else is that important. Maybe in the case of React Native, that's not the case. So React Native also has this really important versioning going on. But yeah, it doesn't hurt to list them all, I think. And we had a ginormous batch in the beginning, but now I think we're pretty much up to date, and we get like 1 PR a week or so, or 2 PRs a week that automatically update themselves with all the new version bumps. So as soon as we merge it, yeah, it's no longer so much anymore. So.
Sorry, does that mean that we could go back to processing individual PRs then?
I think that would be the best option, to make the change that you just proposed to the PR log program, and make it show all the individual updates. I think that would be the best option.
So still doing batch PRs, but then somehow inlining the changes from those PRs into our changelog.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, I'll follow up on that.
The best of both worlds, I think.
Should be.
It's a single PR to merge once a week to get everything updated and tested. And then when you do a release, you just see all the things that have changed and updated.
Cool.
Who's taking responsibility for, I guess, confirming that those version updates are good? Or rather, who's hitting the merge button on those? No responsibility, just who's merging.
So far, it's been Phil. And yeah, we have to trust our own eyes, our own experience, and our own tests.
Cool, sounds good.
So I don't know if you know, but what we do in the CI is actually build all the examples to a static version, and we start them and kill them immediately. And very recently, I changed the latter part, that it starts and then makes a few screenshots and diffs them according to the previous snapshot. So I think in general, that gives me, and probably you, quite a bit of confidence that if you make a change and this screenshot doesn't change, then it's not broken, or not terribly broken at least. But we could definitely be testing more and screenshotting more things, which is something that I plan to do.
Sounds good.
So I'm gonna skip one thing that I've got on the list, or two. I think what we've hit on like a few minutes ago with, for example, the notification, hey, do you want to use this new version of Storybook? I think that is kind of like a gateway to the next topic, which is the CLI. That I think we're currently, we got a situation where, damn, I forgot his name, sorry. I think Oleg, he published a package that the name that I obtained called Storybook. So I'm really happy that we got this package name. But what happened is that Oleg created a new repository and published a package too there, and it basically is a copy of the lib CLI package that we've got in a monorepo, maybe with some changes, and that's something that we need to address. And then there's more stuff that we actually need to address with the CLI in general.
Talk to you soon.
I'll see you soon. Sorry.
Talk to you later, Tom. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, bye.
So, so your proposal is that we use that package to be sort of the Uber CLI for everything related to Storybook as part of a 4.0 change? Or
I think changing the CLI in the way that I have outlined in one of the issues I created on GitHub, I think that would definitely be a major version change. But I think one thing that we can change within this major, so 3, we can already make sure that this code is not duplicated, and maybe the Storybook package would basically just install the add Storybook /CLI and then use it. That would be already a major improvement, I think.
So when I npm install Storybook, I get a get Storybook
yes,
binary in my path, basically. That is the contents of libcli.
It does exactly the same thing as if you were installing at Storybook /CLI.
Okay.
But the code base is duplicated, I'm pretty sure.
Got it. That sounds reasonable to me.
Yeah.
Not like amazing, but it sounds like it's better than the current situation, and that's.
I'm hoping that at some point I can direct my attention to the CLI, but that's probably after I've tackled the mysterious epic that is called customization, which I've started. I've currently kind of abandoned the new documentation site, although I'm hoping that someone else will pick it up and continue to work. But I feel Storybook needs customization, and it needs it soon to be just a lot more useful and a lot more to improve for add-on developers, for example.
Is there somewhere where we can highlight the status of these like tabled projects that are like on pause for the second, so like other developers can take a look and help you on it.
Sure, we could like create GitHub projects or something like that.
Yeah, or just like, I don't know. There is that tag help wanted that we have, but it's like very vague in the sense that I don't know how much help that tag needs and like how much work is need to be done, and also how much context you need in order to work on specific things. I think if we clarify some of those, it might help people or be convinced to contribute a little bit more for us.
Yeah, I think we had like a good first contribution tag or something, but yeah, it's really hard to judge how big a change, how complex something is. Yeah, I guess one of the hard things in open source is getting the right person on the right issue. So yeah, I'm open to thoughts and your ideas on this.
I think if we like put like a public roadmap somewhere where we like highlight what we want to do in the future, and then what the status is of the future initiatives are, like is there somebody who's currently working on it, somebody who is but abandoned it, or is taking a break from it, but here is their progress, and so you can start off where they stopped. Like more of a centralized place to look. Like if you're looking to contribute, here's the like general idea or list of things that could be worked on, and perhaps like somebody to ask for help or ask for clarification on like specific things.
Yeah, we
Sounds
actually
really
have
good.
a roadmap markdown file, but I haven't touched it in maybe 2 months or so. Although
Yeah.
it is still mostly valid on the
Mhm.
things that we wanted to do and want to do. But indeed, it is really missing the key information, and that is like how far along is it, who has been doing what, and where are people needed, and what sort of expertise is needed for that. And yeah, those are the key informations that are currently missing.
It sounds very similar to what Doug was talking about earlier, with sort of like in that case, it was sort of status of existing packages that are released and sort of a single place to look at that and get a sense for what's going on. And this would be sort of a forward-looking version of that, where we have sort of major projects listed out and some sort of stylized way of just seeing what's being worked on right now. I think a lot of the roadmap stuff is actually kind of about where we want to go, and I think that that's fine. But then there's these particular cases of like projects where maybe a whole bunch of work was done, but the work is not seeing the light of day because it just takes much more to get it across the finish line, and those are things that we need to kind of figure out a better solution for. But I like the idea of just having a documentation section where we devote to sort of maintain that in a better way. I don't know, maybe it is just a roadmap.md and we just update it better, or maybe it's a whole section on our doc site where we do it. I don't know.
Do you guys feel
I like the idea.
positive for using GitHub projects for this?
I don't like GitHub projects personally, but that's just my opinion.
I've never used it.
We have a waffle, right?
That waffle hasn't been touched since we got the project transferred over. So
I've
But I
lost
think
it's very project manager based. So if you were an engineer looking for some work, it doesn't really help you. It's more like, here are like, work that needs to be done and like this related area and that kind of thing. If somebody wants to go in and like help prioritize some of it and like organize it a bit inside Waffle, like that is a valid approach. But I think the amount of work that takes is quite significant. And also our backlog of tickets is getting pretty crazy again.
point.
Well, I think there's a lot of issues that are actually support tickets. I'm still okay with doing that. I still have the feeling that if you do support tickets on GitHub, the hurdle or bridge towards getting them to contribute is lower. But
I definitely like the support tickets. I think if there's a previously reported issue and you look on GitHub and like somebody already solved it and like, came back with the answer, like there's a free win for us. And it also shows that the project is still supported, basically.
Yeah, I think that's a positive signal for everyone. But maybe we need to go with the, I don't know, what most open source projects do that get thousands of issues. Just close it after like a month of inactivity or something. I don't like it, but if it's bothering us or hurting us in some way that we've got all these open issues, then we need to do something about it. And I've done it. Like I took an entire day and I closed 100 issues or over 100 issues. But that's intense. And even if you can close off like 30%, which was the case, I could close about 30%. So I actually had to look at almost 200 or 300 issues to get it down to 100.
When Tom and I kind of designed the tagging system, I mean, it's gone through some changes since then, but originally when we started tagging issues, the motivation was that like any issue that has the need more info tag that hasn't been touched for a month, we would automatically close those with a sort of friendly boilerplate response. And so we haven't done any of that automation. But the intent was to actually add a level of automation. I remember in the past, you were sort of opposed to that, Norbert. Maybe it was about how we do it, not about whether we do it. But I'd be willing. I have been intending to sort of circle back on that and do something because GitHub has a easy API and we have the metadata that we need to sort of put some of those rules into place if we want to. And so I'd be happy to take a look at that at some point, or have somebody else do it if anybody else is interested in sort of taking a pass at that.
Yeah, I'm open to the idea of closing issues or support tickets after a month of inactivity, for example. And indeed, if they are clearly labeled, like the follow-up action is for the original poster, clearly you can close it after a month, because if they need to do something and they're not interested in doing it, fine, then the tickets can be closed.
Sounds reasonable to me.
I actually doubt we have over 100 issues that meet this criteria, by the way, but actually.
Yeah, there's very few. I think a while back I went back and closed a whole bunch of them. Let's see how many support. We have 62 open support questions or support tickets. Yeah, I think a month for that. If there's a month of inactivity, that definitely makes sense.
Yeah, you can always just. It's not like you close down all discussion. It's just that it's out of our mind. It's really the signal of a closed issue, right? It's not like it's closed and it cannot never be reopened again. I'm really open to reopening issues once that's needed, and I think we've been clear on that. I usually am clear on that when I close an issue. Like, okay, I'll just close it. But if you feel like you still have this problem, please reopen. Or
I think you might actually not be able to reopen it if you're not a GitHub user, or if you're not like a organization.
but you're able to post and state that you
Yeah.
want it reopened, and that's kind of the point.
Mm.
Sorry, was I talking with muted? I said you may not be able to open it yourself, but you're able to post in it and ask for it to be reopened because you have the issue.
Yeah, yeah, sounds good.
Last thing is a big one. I think we kind of just discussed part of it, like when to mark an issue as resolved or closed. Will we be continuing with the release branch strategy? When are we going to be opening a new release branch? Is it going to be a 3.4, or are we going to be marking for a 4.0 immediately? What are we going to do? And whatever we do, how do we make sure that this process is beginner friendly? Take it away, Michael.
I would say there's never any harm in opening a 3.4 branch, even if our next release happens to be 4.0. So as soon as we start to feel like we're on the home stretch for 3.3, we should probably open a 3.4 branch for any new big features that we want to add. Like, I don't know what other big features. I think we have an open question about what gets merged where, and Daniel is going to take a cut at a proposal for that. But yeah, let me look at all your questions here. I think we can open a 3.4 branch now. I think that the release branch strategy in itself is not bad, or is good, I should say. But how we're using it is not great right now. And so I think there's a sort of weird subjective question about what gets merged where, when, and we don't really have a concrete proposal for that. And my feeling is that 3.2 was way too aggressive, and 3.3 is way too conservative, and there's a cost to being conservative, which is that the release becomes ginormous, and I'd rather amortize those things over weekly releases if possible, more than we're doing right now. So that's my first cut.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think we could also like publicize like a release schedule once every week in terms of patch versions, and like quarterly maybe for minor versions. And we don't really have to target or name our next branch like a version. I would say we can name it like just next, and then like deprecating features or something like that. That way, if I have something to deprecate now, I can just merge it to the deprecating branch, and whenever 4.0 rolls around, we can merge that instead of creating a ticket, forgetting about it, and like coming back and say, oh, this is a 4.0 thing that we needed to do.
Interesting. Have you seen other people using that deprecated branch strategy? It sounds really smart, but I've never done it before, so I'm curious about it.
We use it internally sometimes, but the danger here is like rebase. There's a lot of maintenance that goes into having to rebase over a long period of time. I think that's about the only downside.
I've seen teams have many long-lived branches or forever branches, and in my experience, it's always been a nightmare. And the amount of work that you have to put in to keep all those branches in sync and aligned, and it just gets worse and worse and more. And the questions about where to merge what just only get harder. So if possible, I would prefer that we have as few long-lived branches as possible. I agree with Michael that maybe committing everything on master is not the best strategy. Maybe. But I would rather not have more than one release branch at a time.
That's a fair point.
I guess.
But I do think that towards the end of 3.3, we should have something for 3.4.
Right. Then you would basically just call 3.3 done and final, and that it basically should be the next release. I think if you're committed to that, then you should just merge it, fix it, and release it. And that way still only have one release branch. But maybe if the stabilizing part takes so long, takes like a week, and there's like security patches in between, then having it already merged to master is not a good idea. So maybe we should try to minimize the amount of having the amount of time that we have multiple release branches.
Yeah.
I don't know if this is the right place to discuss it, since we're already at an hour and 20 minutes in the meeting, but I'll sort of raise it, which is that I think there may be other kind of release solutions, even for like if we automated the release, for example, and just had an automated weekly patch release, like there's no reason that we couldn't even have like on, I don't know, Thursday mornings, the patch release goes out in an alpha, even for the patch release. And on Sunday morning, the full patch release goes out every week, or, and so that would maybe even enable us to be a little more aggressive about merging stuff in sooner. Because I think a lot of the problems and instabilities that we had, we caught it fairly quickly after it goes out, because we have so many users that somebody reports it. I fear that there are order of magnitude more people affected by it who just don't say anything and stop using the tool or whatever. But but I think that we had a pretty quick turnaround on those bugs when they happened, and if we had those things going out in alpha releases, even for the patch releases, then there's a chance that we could catch that stuff and turn it. Right now, it's a little bit of work to do alpha releases and full releases, and maybe it's just complicated. But like I did prefer the 3.2 style more before the instability happened, because we just had kind of a constant cadence of improvements and small things going out, and we were using the feature branch, the sort of vNext branch, for just big old features like Vue, like Angular, like these sort of mega changes, and everything that was like a small change was just going out constantly, and I kind of like that better. But I don't know.
Yep, it's likable that it's out the door. It's released and it's shipped. But if it means releasing so often that our users are overloaded and just they feel the pressure of being up to date themselves. So if they feel pressured to keep updating and then we release every day, that annoys them. At least that's the feedback that I received, that we were moving too quickly, not even per se too unstable, but there was just too much to do to keep Storybook running, even when you didn't need to update and you didn't feel didn't really have any benefit. Many people just feel the need to keep updated, which is I think a good feeling. So we should just try and ease it, and make sure that we don't release every few days when it's not needed.
Okay.
My feeling is there's always like a pretty significant bug somewhere that affects like a really small percentage of users out on the master that should get kicked out. And if the user has like a mind of, oh, it's going to be Thursday mornings, then they know to like, you know, expect it Thursday morning, as opposed to like, oh, I don't know when this is going to come out. That kind of mindset.
I like the idea of making it regular, and I'm totally in favor of that. I think the real question is whether those releases contain only bug fixes or whether they also contain minor features and so on, and like not minor is an overloaded word, but small features, low impact features or not, long term, and so yeah, I would be all in favor of making the release more regular for bug fixes. But then there's a question of what constitutes a bug fix, what constitutes a small impact feature, what constitutes a big feature, and so.
Oh, Daniel's going to tell us. So
he's going to tell us. Yeah, yeah. Score.
Sounds good.
I agree 100% that having a regular schedule for patch releases is going to be great for us and for users. Whatever date it is or whatever schedule it is, I'll be fine with it. And maybe, Michael, for you, it would be really important to share your knowledge about doing releases and automating as much as possible, possibly even using the CI to do part of it. Mind that we can do manual tasks in our CI. So we should try and ease off the load that you carry for doing all the releases as well. You know, there's only one Michael, and
no, it's super easy to do releases, and that's why I'm like happy to do releases when anybody asks and try to turn it around quickly. But at least for a while there, I was sort of in different country every few days and like really kind of off the net, and so but I agree with you that automating it, I'd like to just automate it entirely for the patch release and just have a weekly patch release that goes out, assuming the test pass. Yeah,
I'm pretty sure Carlos would love to see some actual usages of his product.
Oh yeah. Oh, the alpha release. The alpha release is a bigger deal though, right? Like I think that one is not so automatable yet, but the patch release should definitely be.
I mean, I think we can also do like weekly patch or alpha releases to get it out to the users as well.
The issue with that at least right now, there's like a one-time thing that you have to do for new packages where you have to publish it. You can't publish to the alpha tag immediately. You have to publish to the latest tag before you can start publishing to the alpha tag. And so I guess that's also automatable, but it's something that like requires a little bit of care, whereas like just publishing to NPM is super straightforward. So, but yeah, so patch releases and then possibly even alpha releases. Stretch goal for now, but
Cool, sounds good. Anything else we have?
I'm missing your audio, Michael.
can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can. Okay. Maybe it's just on my end. So last question that I have regarding this whole releasing and merging and closing things is that I tend to be just whenever something is resolved in master, I close the issue. But I think there's some other thoughts on this.
I think Phil was much more in favor of keeping it open until the actual publish goes on and applying the merge tag. But I think if we have a regular schedule, we can just leave a message when the issue gets closed and say, hey, it will be published whichever day it is, and then we can just hit the close button on it.
I think Tom was the original sort of proponent of this strategy where we don't close things until they're published, and I think it makes a lot of sense from a end user standpoint. That like if I can't use the fix, then is it really closed? But it requires some discipline on everybody's part to sort of mark things as merged, and I forget to do it, and I'm sure everybody else forgets to do it as well. So I have no problem.
To do it every single time.
Yeah,
I'm really consistent in forgetting.
I would say probably it's a good idea, and I support the idea, but I think maybe we need to think about how to get the discipline improved, and possibly through some form of automation, because we have a reference to the issue in the PR. We have, we know when the PR is closed. Like, it's not something that necessarily a human has to go in and do because it's very regular, but I'm not sure what the best way to automate that would be.
I think the natural GitHub flow is to just close the issue when the thing gets merged. But maybe GitHub is making the assumption that the master branch is the single point of truth, and the master is always equal to production, and so master will always mirror what's on NPM, which in our case is not the case. But I still feel drawn to this idea that you merge the thing and the issue goes away. But maybe I just need some education on, and some more people telling me that I should actually be more professional and do all this tagging and all this stuff on GitHub.
Yeah, for me, I think it makes total sense to keep it open, but I think until we have like a practical way of ensuring they get closed, it's kind of strange.
What about the idea that I don't know. I feel like I really like the idea that if master is the point of truth and master reflects the latest release, but we want to batch these things up so that we do one release a week, like we could potentially change the release structure in a way to sort of reflect that. So when you merge to master, it automatically publishes the release, for example, and then and then we have weekly release. You know, I mean, the sort of easy solution would be, oh, every single time we merge to master, we publish a new patch version or something like that, and then with some special case for non-patch versions. But then we're going to have the problem that you mentioned earlier, Norbert, of people saying we're moving too fast because we're merging potentially a PR a day or whatever, and just having a constant stream of patch versions going out. I think it's out of the scope of this conversation, but I do think that there are other possibilities for how we manage this stuff.
I feel the problem with that is entry-level people. Everyone expects to branch off of master, and that would not be the case then anymore. You would always branch off.
I see.
This week release branch. Yeah.
Is there an easy way to trigger an action from, I guess it's a CI when
yes,
when a merge happens, like when a merge happens, inspect the PR contents, find the issue that it references, and go mark that as merged, or something like that. Like those are basically the heuristics that we want people to do, and if we can automate that in the CI mechanism, then
so what you can do in Circle CI is mark a specific task to be manual. So like it needs a manual go ahead button, and it can also have dependencies, so another task needs to have finished, and you can do automatic tasks after a manual task, and you can have manual tasks after manual tasks. All of that is possible, so you can create your own workflow within Circle CI and create a automated release after the CI is basically done testing and building.
Battery's dying. Be right back.
I hit the wrong button there.
Welcome back, Daniel.
Sorry, guys.
I actually have my computer plugged in. I'll have to know, Michael.
Taking one from your playbook, Norbert.
Yeah.
I'm at like 16% too.
I usually end my conversations with Michael saying, "Oh, I think my battery's about to."
All right. So cool. I think there's probably something pretty easy we could do there, just to make the current setup work a little bit better than it does right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We didn't talk at all about your component registry, Norbert.
Yeah, that's the 4.0 territory that I've been
4.0.
treading on.
Okay.
So I'm currently working on this new layout mechanism. It's working, but obviously it's not completely backwards compatible, because I currently find the way of getting Storybook's manager UI to render in a certain way. I find it really stupid, or I can't find a better word, but there's like 10 toggles of booleans that you can flip, and then hopefully that the thing renders in the right way. And some of the booleans override other booleans, and
You're talking about the like show down panel,
that
inlet,
stuff.
blah, blah, blah.
It's a mess. And so really what an end user or me as a developer is trying to do is to render Storybook's UI in a specific layout configuration. So that's really what I've built. I've built a option for the UI options that is called layout, and it describes the layout in a JSON format in how you want it. And I think that's really powerful. But like I said, obviously that means that basically all those knobs, all those booleans now are deprecated in this branch. And so I've actually removed them. And I've made the full screen thing work again. So that's really the state of where it is. You can describe your layout, and you can make it full screen. And interestingly enough, this layout also defines which component you want to render in what place, obviously. So that kind of nudges towards, wait a minute. So we've got like a declarative way of defining, I want the component explorer in that part of the layout. I want the add-on panel on that part of the layout. What if, instead of having those 3 components, I would just have every possible component available to me? And that's where this idea of a component registry comes from. So, and that's also the same as the components in the lib/components. That's really where I'm trying to go at, where we've got a library of components that you can use anywhere within the manager UI, and you can create your own layout, register your own components in this registry, and then render them in a layout that you want.
Interesting. I think that's a much longer conversation.
So the thing that I have is that actually what I have now is already quite powerful, and it's actually quite small, and most of it is backwards compatible. But of course it's not completely backwards compatible, because these 5 or 6 booleans have been replaced by a complex object. So I'm wondering, like, what's my next step? Should I just push forward and make a 4.0 and completely refactor everything and not worry about backwards compatibility? Or should I actually try and hack in this backwards compatibility and basically translate these 10 booleans into a tweakable complex object?
Yes.
As you can imagine, I'm not super happy about the latter option.
You cut out there.
Oh,
Or
as you can imagine, I'm not super happy about the last option.
Yeah. I would definitely say if we can keep backward compatibility, we can and we should. And in this case, we can. It's not pretty or whatever, but I think it's something that, like, if all of a sudden those options go away, then that's
functionally they don't go away. You can still get Storybook to render.
I don't care. I mean, if I have my code base set up in the old way, then like it should just work, right? And then I think we can deprecate those things. And even in 4.0, I would say we deprecate those things. And I guess ideally we release this in 3.4 with deprecation, and then in 4.0 we remove them, because I agree they're crappy, but lots of people use them. I'm sure I use them, so. And I'm happy to change it in my code, but I'm putting myself in the mind of somebody who's not involved in the project. I'd be like, what the hell?
So the way it is now, it would not be mergeable to any 3.x, in your opinion?
For sure, not 3.x. Yeah. Yeah.
And so I would basically be waiting for this to, if I were to merge this into any release branch, that would automatically be a 4.x release.
I think so, if those options cease to become available. And I think people use them, at least some of them. Down panel and right, true. So yeah.
All right, I'll give it some more thoughts.
Happy to contribute on that as well. That particular, if you want somebody to write the sort of compatibility code for you, I can take that when in my copious free time.
Well, it's not that simple, because if someone were to customize the layout and then do the shortcut for moving the bottom panel to the right, what the fuck should happen?
We document it. But I mean, in that case, they're using a new feature, so they should look at the documentation. But anyway, I think I'm more concerned about people who are just using their old config and don't want to change anything and don't want Storybook to suddenly do something radically different from what it's doing right now, which you would expect potentially in a 4.0 upgrade, but you wouldn't expect in a 3-point-something upgrade. I wouldn't expect that.
Me neither, which is why I'm bringing it up.
Yeah. Quick question: can I have multiple add-on windows?
Add-on windows, yes. You can have multiple previews. You can have multiple component explorers, but none of those things actually really work well. So,
okay, maybe it's a different conversation, but I think for me, having multiple add-on panels is super interesting. So that
I think
I have
they sync up. Like,
I see.
Yeah, because that's part of the Redux or whatever it's Poda store. So both components sync up, and in fact, I've done this. The knobs add-on sync up as well. So you change the knob in one of the panels, and then it also changes on the other one. So that's all managed by our state manager.
But I mean, can I have like knobs in one pane and README in another pane? And
no, it cannot, because the selected tab is synced across the two components.
I see. Okay, got it. Okay, different conversation, but
yeah. But of course, that's one of the goals, to be able to do that.
Nice. Yeah, very exciting project.
All right, guys, I'm gonna hop off.
Yeah,
Cool.
I think
Thanks, Daniel. Great to
I had a
talk to you
great time. Thank you for everyone for being here. Thank you, Daniel. Thank you, Michael.
All right, are we done? Can I go back to sleep? Yeah.
All right, bye.
Thanks.
Bye, guys. See ya.
Bye, guys.